decades of family meals. Karen used to sit right there every morning, reading the Portland Press-Herald with her coffee, occasionally laughing at some silly story in the police blotter. He shook his head, forcing the memory away. It was 10:45. He made a fresh pot of coffee and paced the kitchen, checking the clock every few minutes. His military training from his younger years had taught him patience, but this was different. This wasn't waiting for orders or watching for movement in the dark. This was personal. This was about Karen. At 11:30, he sat down and pulled the box closer. He ran his thumb over the keyhole. The note had said midnight. Why midnight? What difference could 15 minutes make? But something deep in his gut told him to wait, to follow the instructions. Karen used to say he was too stubborn for his own good, but she also trusted his instincts. "Trust your gut, Jim," she'd say. "It's smarter than you think." At 11:55, he slid the key into the lock. 5 minutes, 300 seconds. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the wind outside. His heart was pounding against his ribs. It felt ridiculous, getting so... She'd want you to be practical. She'd want you to be safe and comfortable. Jim studied his daughter. The tension in her shoulders, the way her voice trembled slightly when she said 4.3 million. Don't trust your daughter. The warning echoed in his mind. "I'll think about it," he said, just to end the conversation. Relief flooded her face. "That's all I'm asking." She checked her expensive gold watch. "I should go. I have that meeting." At the door, she turned back. "You can't hold on to the past forever, Dad. Sometimes letting go is the right thing to do." He watched her Lexus disappear down the road, kicking up dust. 4.3 million for a farm. Nobody offered that kind of money without wanting something badly. He walked straight to Karen's office. The room still smelled faintly of the lavender sachets she kept in the desk drawers. He sat in her rolling chair and opened her laptop. The password was simple. Jim, 1962. His name and birth year. The email program loaded, and he started scrolling. 3 months before she died, there was an email from Atlantic Development Partners. "We are prepared to increase our offer to $4.3 million. He scrolled further back. Earlier offers, $3.8 million, then $4.1 million. They had pursued her for 6 months, each offer higher than the last. Karen had never mentioned a word of it. He opened the filing cabinet, financial records, bank statements. Then he found them, cash withdrawals. July, $9,000. First National Bank, Portland, August, $13,600. Maine. He answered immediately. "You found something?" It wasn't a question. The same distorted voice. "The cave. There's a card. What is this? What was Karen into?" Karen was into the truth. "That cave is being used to store narcotics before distribution. Your son-in-law facilitated the deal. He needs the property to continue the operation. The development company is a front. They've been trying to buy you out quietly. Now that you've refused, they'll get aggressive. Your daughter is involved, whether she knows it or not. The evidence is buried in the rose garden. Dig there tonight. And Jim, they're watching you. Be smart." The line went dead. Jim stood frozen in the kitchen. Narcotics, on his land. David, his daughter's husband, a drug trafficker. And Emily, his own daughter, somehow caught up in it. He looked out the window toward the front yard, where Karen's rose garden lay dormant under the November frost. She had planted it years ago after her mother passed away, a memorial of peace roses with pale pink and yellow petals. The truth is buried where the roses bloom. He spent the day in a state of controlled panic. He checked the locks repeatedly, kept the curtains drawn, and jumped at every sound. The phone buzzed again in the late afternoon. A photo, his farmhouse, his truck, his driveway, taken from the tree line. The message read, "We see you. Wait for darkness." At 11 that night, under a moonless sky, Jim slipped out the back door. He moved low and fast, staying in the shadows of the barn and the old sheds until he reached the rose garden. He knelt at the center near the stone marker for Karen's mother and began to dig. The ground was hard, frozen just below the surface, each strike of the shovel from behind a tree on the property line. The man who had warned him to be careful, who had pretended to reopen the investigation, was one of them. He had been feeding information to David the whole time. In the chaos, Agent Jenkins guided Jim to the porch. "Open the letter, Mr. Bradshaw. It's what Karen wanted you to see." With shaking hands, Jim tore open the envelope. He pulled out several sheets of paper covered in Karen's familiar handwriting. He began to read. "My dearest Jim, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I'm so sorry I had to keep secrets from you. I couldn't tell you what I was doing because I knew you'd try to stop me, or worse, you'd try to help me, and then they would come after you too. I couldn't bear that. I discovered something terrible. David, our Emily's husband, is part of a major drug trafficking ring. He's been using the cave system under our back field to store narcotics before they're shipped down the East Coast. It's the perfect location. Rural, isolated, close to the highway. I found the cave entrance by accident one night when I couldn't sleep and saw lights moving in the back field. I hid and watched. I saw them bringing in packages. I saw David directing them. For months, I documented everything. Every truck, every face, every date. I took photos. I made recordings. I hid the evidence where I knew you'd find it if something happened to me. I contacted the FBI. Agent Jenkins has been my handler. She's the one who will bring you this letter. Jim, I have set up a trust fund for you with almost $400,000. It's from the sale of my mother's jewelry and some bonds I had. It's clean. It's made me forge her signature. He manipulated me. I was so stupid, so blind. I just wanted him to love me. Please, Dad, can you ever forgive me?" Jim sat on that letter for weeks. The trial of David and his associates was a long, drawn-out affair that dominated the local news. The evidence from Karen's buried box was overwhelming. Her detailed notes, her photographs, her audio recordings painted a damning picture of the conspiracy. Agent Jenkins testified about Karen's bravery, about how she had risked everything to stop a criminal enterprise. Jim testified about the night of the arrests, about finding the box in the rose garden, about reading Karen's final words. And finally, Emily took the stand. Dressed in a prison jumpsuit, her face gaunt and her eyes hollow, Emily told the jury everything. How David had slowly isolated her from her friends. How he had convinced her that her mother's will was a mistake. How she had been too afraid and too in love to question him. She broke down completely when she talked about learning of her mother's work with the FBI. "She was a hero," Emily sobbed, her voice echoing through the courtroom. "My mother was a hero, and I helped the man who killed her. I have to live with that for the rest of my life." The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. David was found guilty on all counts: conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering, racketeering, obstruction of justice, and bigamy. The judge sentenced him to 45 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. He would be in his late 80s before he was even eligible for release. Nicole, his real wife, was cleared of any involvement. She returned to Boston with her 2 children to rebuild. Bread filled the air. It was everything Karen had dreamed of. Jim, now in his mid-70s, stood near the education center. His knees ached, and his hair was completely white, but his heart was full. He watched as Emily, now the official education coordinator, led a group of wide-eyed school children through the garden. She was showing them the different types of roses, telling them stories about her mother, about how a simple farm girl became a hero. The children listened, captivated. Later, after the last guests had left and the farm had grown quiet, Jim walked alone through the rose garden. The setting sun painted the sky in vibrant hues of orange and gold. He stopped at the granite stone he had placed years ago, engraved with Karen's name and a simple phrase: Truth Seeker, Protector, Beloved. He knelt, his old joints creaking, and placed a hand on the warm stone. "We did it, Karen," he whispered to the wind. "The farm is safe. It's thriving. Kids come here to learn. Your story is being told. Emily." Emily came home. She's not the same woman who left. She's becoming the person you always knew she could be. She takes care of your roses every week. She talks about you to anyone who will listen. A soft breeze rustled through the rose bushes, carrying their sweet perfume. For a moment, just a moment, Jim could have sworn he felt a hand on his shoulder. He smiled, tears in his eyes. "I'm living, Karen, just like you asked. We all are." He stood up, brushed the dirt from his knee, and looked back at the farmhouse. The lights were on in the kitchen. He could see Mark inside, pouring 2 glasses of lemonade. He could hear Mike and Sarah's laughter drifting from their cottage. And walking toward him from the education center, a small smile on her face, was Emily. She held a single yellow rose, Karen's favorite, which she placed gently on the stone. "Ready to go home, Dad?" she asked. Jim looked at the farm, at the legacy of love and courage that surrounded him, at his daughter standing before him. He looped his arm through hers. "Yeah, sweetheart, let's go home." As they walked toward the farmhouse, the last light of the day fading behind them, Jim thought about the journey that had brought them here. The fear, the betrayal, the grief, the long, hard road to forgiveness. It had nearly broken him. But Karen had been right. He was stronger than he knew, and love, real love, was stronger than anything. The farm would go on. The roses would bloom again next spring. New children would come to learn, and new stories would be told. Karen's legacy would live on, not just in the education center or the garden, but in the hearts of everyone who knew her story, and in the heart of her daughter, who had finally found her way home. Jim paused at the porch steps and looked back at the rose garden one last time. The stone marker was just visible in the gathering dusk, a silent sentinel watching over the land. He nodded once, a small gesture of acknowledgement, of gratitude, of love. Then he opened the door and stepped inside, into the warmth and the light, into the family that had been broken and mended, into the future that Karen had believed in. The door closed behind him, and the farm settled into the peaceful silence of the June night, waiting for tomorrow, waiting for the next chapter, waiting for the roses to bloom again.